Whenever you watch a documentary about a group like NXVM or Heaven's Gate, it's so easy to think, how could anyone fall for that? I would never join a cult. And that's a totally normal reaction. But here's the thing, it kind of misses the whole point of how these groups actually work. So today, we're not just going to look at the wild headlines. We're going to go deep, and I mean deep, into the psychological playbook of high control groups. All right, let's get into it. This quote right here, from a guy who was way up in the NXIVM leadership, is the perfect place to kick things off. Why? Because it just flips our whole way of thinking about this on its head. It makes us ask a much, much better question. If people don't join cults, then what are they joining? They join groups that promise to make their lives better. Simple as that. They're looking for community, for a real sense of purpose, for personal growth, or, just to feel loved and like they belong somewhere. I mean, take NXIVM. It wasn't advertised with a sign that said, hey, come join our cult. No way. It was sold as executive success programs, these elite workshops that would help you unlock your true potential. People signed up to better themselves, not to hand over their lives. The really dark stuff, that was hidden behind a very shiny, very appealing mask. So to really get our heads around this, we're going to walk through the entire process. We'll start with that initial alluring promise that reels people in. Then we'll dissect the actual system of mind control. We're going to look at the psychology of the leader, explore the mental trap that keeps people stuck, and finally, we'll talk about what life looks like after someone gets out. Okay, so first up, the alluring promise. How does this whole thing even start? Well, it usually begins with an invitation that just feels like it arrived at the exact right moment, offering the one thing you feel is missing from your life. Now, this is so important to understand. Being susceptible to these groups has nothing to do with being weak-minded or unintelligent or gullible, not at all. It just has to do with being human. We know from research that people are just more open to these messages when they're going through something really tough, like a bad breakup, losing a job, or having a crisis of faith. These are moments when we're all emotionally vulnerable, and a promise of clear answers, a tight-knit community, and unconditional love, well, that can feel incredibly powerful. And this is the #1 recruitment tool they use. It's called love bombing. Just imagine walking into a room full of people for the first time, and they immediately treat you like you were the most fascinating person they have ever met. They hang on your every word, they praise you, they tell you how special you are. This isn't just being nice, it's a very deliberate, coordinated technique. The whole point is to create this instant, super intense emotional bond that makes you feel like, wow, I finally found my people. It's intoxicating. All right, so once that emotional hook is in place, the system of control starts getting built around you. And it happens so gradually, so subtly that you probably wouldn't even notice it. To really understand this system, we're going to use this incredible framework developed by Dr. Stephen Hassan, who was a cult member himself. It's called the BITE model. It's an acronym for behavior, information, thought, and emotional control.
First up, B is for behavior control. This is all about regulating every single aspect of your physical reality, what you do, where you go, and who you get to see.
The group literally starts to micromanage your life. They can control where you live, what you're allowed to eat, often through really extreme low-calorie diets, and they mess with how much you sleep. There are strict rules for absolutely everything and punishments for breaking them. It creates this constant state of anxiety. And the goal here is pretty simple: physically exhaust the person, because an exhausted person is way more compliant and a lot less likely to think critically. A really chilling example of this comes from that secret sorority inside NXIVM called DOS. The women were forced to do these readiness drills. A text could come in at 3 in the morning. They had exactly 60 seconds to reply with the word ready. If just one person was a second too late, the entire group was punished, sometimes brutally. Think about what that does. It trains this immediate, unquestioning obedience. Okay, next in the BITE model is I, for information control. If behavior control is about managing your body, information control is all about managing your mind's access to the outside world. What the group does is create an information bubble. Any access to outside news, books that might be critical, or even talking to former members is a huge no-no. They keep members so busy with group stuff, chanting, recruiting, seminars, that there's just no time left to think for yourself or do your own research. Plus, information is doled out on a need-to-know basis, creating this pyramid where only the top leaders know the whole story. The only reality you know is the one the group feeds you. And that leads us right into T for thought control.
This is where the group literally tries to move into your head and reshape the way you process reality itself.
So how do they do this? Well, for one, they reframe the entire world into this very simplistic, black and white, us versus them battle. They introduce their own special jargon, these loaded phrases and cliches that are designed to just shut down any critical thought. For instance, any outside criticism is just dismissed as an attack from a suppressive person. Doubts are not to be explored, they're to be eliminated. Members are actually taught thought-stopping techniques, like chanting or meditating, to immediately silence any negative thoughts that pop into their heads.
And finally, we have the E in BITE, emotional control. Now this is probably the most powerful piece of the puzzle because it's all about making you completely dependent on the group for your own sense of self-worth.
Emotional control is all about messing with your feelings. One minute you're being showered with praise, the next you're being publicly shamed. It creates this emotional roller coaster where you're constantly desperate for the leader's approval. Guilt is used as a weapon. If something goes wrong, it's always your fault, never the group's. But maybe the most powerful tool is phobia indoctrination. They drill into your head that if you ever leave, something terrible will happen. You'll get sick, you'll go insane, you'll be damned for eternity. That fear creates an invisible prison in your mind that's way stronger than any physical wall. So we have this really elaborate system of control, right? But who builds it? Who's the architect behind it all? Well, at the very center of almost every single high control group, you'll find a very specific type of personality, the pathological leader. What's just wild is how consistent these traits are. It doesn't matter if you're talking about Jim Jones or Keith Raniere, the playbook is eerily similar. They are almost always pathological narcissists. They have this unshakable belief that they are special, that they alone have the answers to life's biggest questions. They demand absolute, perfect loyalty. They cannot handle any criticism, and they surround themselves with followers who they devalue, even as they demand constant adoration. And this isn't just a big ego, it's a personality disorder that's basically perfectly designed for manipulation and control. So, this brings us to the million-dollar question. The question that everybody on the outside is screaming at their TV. When the rules get crazier, the demands get more extreme, and the abuse becomes obvious, why on earth don't people just get up and leave? The answer lies in this incredibly powerful psychological trap that locks people in from the inside. And we're talking about something called cognitive dissonance. You might have heard of it. It's that awful, uncomfortable feeling you get when you hold two contradictory beliefs at the same time, or when you do something that goes against what you believe. And our brains will do almost anything to get rid of that discomfort. The classic example of this comes from this wild study back in the 1950s of a small UFO group. They believed the world was going to end in a great flood on a specific date and that aliens would rescue them. So they quit their jobs, sold their houses, the whole shebang. So the big night comes, and nothing happens. No aliens, no flood. But here is the mind-blowing part. They didn't give up. Instead, the leader came out and said she'd just gotten a new message. Their group's faith had been so powerful that God decided to spare the entire planet. So they went from being dead wrong to being heroes, and their belief got even stronger. So here's the key takeaway. When you're in that state of dissonance, I've given up my family, my money, my whole life for this group, versus, wait, this group might be hurting me, your brain has 3 ways to fix it. 1, you can change your belief and admit, okay, maybe I was wrong. That's super rare because it's incredibly painful. 2, you can change your action and just leave. Also really hard because of all the fears they've instilled in you. So most people take path number 3. They change their perception of their actions. They rationalize. All these sacrifices I'm making just prove how committed I am. The leader is tough on me because he's helping me grow. Every sacrifice becomes more proof that they're on the right path, digging them deeper and deeper into the trap. But people do get out. They escape. And when they do, their journey is so far from over. Getting away from the group physically is really just step 1 in what is often a long, incredibly hard road to recovery. And before we dive into recovery, it's actually worth talking about the words we use. The word cult itself can be really loaded, right? It's often just thrown around as an insult. That's why a lot of experts and former members actually prefer the term high control group. And the reason is simple. It's more descriptive. It stops us from arguing about weird beliefs and instead focuses on the specific harmful behaviors, the manipulation, the strict hierarchy, the total control over people's lives. It's just a more useful and accurate term. The after effects of being in one of these groups are just profound. People deal with flashbacks that can be triggered by a simple word or a song. Many of them struggle to trust their own judgment because for years they were told their own intuition was wrong. Even making simple choices, like what to buy at the grocery store, can feel completely overwhelming. And beneath all that is this deep, deep well of guilt, fear, and anger that they have to work through, on top of the crushing loneliness of losing their entire social circle.
Understanding all these psychological systems isn't just about analyzing these fringe groups from a distance. It actually gives us a lens to look critically at all the groups that ask for our loyalty, whether it's a political party, a corporation, a religion, or even a wellness brand. It pushes us to ask some really important questions about authority and community. And it leaves us with one final, tough question to chew on. In a world that is just full of charismatic leaders and compelling ideas, how do any of us really know where healthy devotion ends and dangerous delusion begins?